Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Today, we are holding the fifth of our series of press conferences on the Chinese economy. Today, we have with us Minister Liu Kun of the Finance Ministry to brief you on how the ministry has been implementing the important instructions of the 20th CPC National Congress. He will also address your questions. Together with Minister Liu, we also have two vice ministers, Minister Xu and Minister Zhu. Now, let me pass the floor to Minister Liu. Ladies and gentlemen, dear friend, good morning. It's a great pleasure to have this face-to-face meeting with you before the two sessions. On behalf of the ministry, I wish to thank you all for your support for our fiscal work. Today, I'm going to share with you some basic information about the fiscal work in 2022. 2022 has been an important year, a very important year in the history of the party and the country. The 20th CPC National Congress drew up a great blueprint for building a moderately prosperous society in all respects. The CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, united and led the whole party and people in overcoming difficulties, increasing the quality of development and maintaining the stability of the economy and society. At the Political Bureau meeting of the CPC Central Committee on April the 29th, 2022, General Secretary Xi Jinping stressed that it is important to intensify macro-regulation, keep economy stable, and achieve the annual targets for the economy and society. Under the centralized unified leadership of the CPC Central Committee, the fiscal system thoroughly implemented the instructions of the 20th CPC National Congress, upheld the general approach of seeking progress while maintaining stability, fully, faithfully applied the new development philosophy on all fronts, moved faster to develop a new development paradigm, and front-loaded the various fiscal policies to promote economic rebound. The total budgetary revenue for the year was 20.37 trillion yuan, up by 0.6% year-on-year over 2021, and the total budgetary expenditure was 26.06 trillion yuan, up by 6.1% year-on-year, providing the necessary fiscal support for fighting the pandemic and growing the economy. First of all, we made stronger use of fiscal policies to stabilize the general economy. We stepped up overall coordination in the use of government funds to maintain the necessary intensity, to increase the aggregate demand, and at the same time maintain reasonable deficit, which has been below 3% for the past 5 years. This has given us the policy space to deal with new challenges and difficulties. We thoroughly implemented the tax and fee package policies in support of the economy. For the year, tax refund and tax and fee cuts and deferrals amounted to over 4.2 trillion yuan, bringing down tax as a share of GDP from 17% in 2018 to 13.8% in 2022. We accelerated the issuance and use of local government special purpose bonds and lawfully and fully utilized the unused quota of 502.9 billion yuan of local government special purpose bonds. The regulation has been robust and effective and contributed to a stable economy. Second, we intensified funding and policy support to keep good functioning at the township level. In the past year, the fiscal health of township-level governments has been a priority in our work. We step up funds and policy support to solidify the governments at this level. Over the year, the central government transfer payment to local governments was 9.71 trillion yuan, an increase of 1.42 trillion, up by 17.1%. In the past 5 years, the total transfer payment was 40.66 trillion yuan, an annual average increase of 8.4%, providing strong support for local governments to meet the people's essential needs, payroll payments, and day-to-day functioning. We expanded the scope of direct funding, bringing it from 1.7 trillion yuan in 2020 to 4.1 trillion last year. Generally, township levels have been functioning well, and they become part of the strong foundation for a good economy and society. Third, we promoted innovation-driven development and stable industrial and supply chains. In 2022, the total science and technology expenditure was 1.0023 trillion yuan, up by 3.8% year-on-year, providing a strong guarantee for basic research and the R&D of critical technologies in key fields. On the other hand, we also improved our policy support. We raised the additional tax deduction ratio for R&D spending by SMEs to 100%. We improved the government procurement policies that favor innovation. We implemented temporary fiscal subsidies for domestic passenger flights and supported a number of national cargo hubs to extend and bolster their chains and strengthen the resilience of supply industrial chains. Fourth, we promoted rural revitalization and the balanced development between regions and urban and rural areas. Committed to a new development philosophy, we used the transfer payments, fiscal and taxation policies to promote balanced regional development and between urban and rural areas. We provided 40 billion yuan of subsidies in 3 batches to grain producers. And out of the central government reserve funds, we used 10 billion to help fight drought, natural disasters, and ensure a good autumn harvest. The central government allocated more funds for combined efforts to reduce poverty and revitalize rural areas. We helped implement the major regional development strategies and stepped up support in transfer payment to the vulnerable areas, which saw an increase of 8.2%. Fifth, we helped to meet the people's basic needs and increase their welfare. Putting the people first, we tried to the best of our fiscal capacity to meet their essential needs, especially providing the basic and inclusive services support. We stepped up funding for pandemic control to reduce its shock to people's life and work. We increased outlays in livelihood areas such as education, social security, employment, and healthcare, as well as fighting pollution in air, water, and soil, and cleaning up the rural environment. The outlay has saw an increase of 5.5%, 8.1%, 17.8%, 13.8% respectively. Compared with the levels of 2017, the average low-income insurance standard in urban and rural areas increased by 39.2% and 62.4% respectively, and the average fiscal subsidy standards for basic medical insurance increased from 450 yuan to 610 yuan. Sixth, we deepened reform of the fiscal and taxation system and achieved great results in supervision. Fiscal and accounting supervision is an important part of the national supervision system. We deepened reform in this sector, rolled out guiding opinions on reforming the fiscal and taxation system at and below provincial levels, promoted integrated management of the budget, fulfilled our principal responsibility in supervision, strengthened the overall system, made clear the focus of our work, and tightened discipline, which has seen more efficient fiscal governance. Ladies and gentlemen, the year 2023 is the beginning year of implementing these instructions of the 20th CPC National Congress. The ministry will take it as an important political task to thoroughly implement the instructions of the Congress, keenly understand the decisive significance of the two establishes to enhance our full awareness and our confidence in 4 areas and stay committed to uphold the better fight the pandemic and keep economic and society stable, to promote quality development and appropriate increase in quantity. We will help promote supply side structural reform, expand domestic demand, and better coordinate economic and other policies, better coordinate domestic and international circulation, and better coordinate our short-term and long-term goals to intensify our fiscal policies and make it more efficient for a better economy and contribute to the building of a moderately prosperous society in all respects. So this is my opening remark. Now I'm ready for your questions. Thank you. Now the floor is open for questions. Please identify your media affiliation before asking your questions. Thank you. Recently, international agencies, including the UN, have been upgrading their forecast for the Chinese economy, believing that China has enough fiscal space to support growth. At the Central Economic Work Conference, it was also said that the proactive fiscal policy in 2023 will be stronger and more efficient and to enhance market expectations. So how will the fiscal policy be stronger and how will it be more efficient? Thank you for your question. At last year's Central Economic Work Conference, there was a clear guidance on the exercise of fiscal policy. General Secretary Xi Jinping stressed that we need to maintain stability, seek progress while maintaining stability, continue to implement proactive fiscal policy and prudent monetary policy, and fiscal policy should be stronger and more efficient. This means that we will stick to the general approach of seeking progress while maintaining stability. We'll balance between what is needed and what is possible, the short-term and long-term, and development and security. Now, the Chinese economy is not yet firmly established for recovery. There is shrinking demand, supply shocks, and weakening expectations. And we also face a volatile external environment. In response, we need to step up macro fiscal regulation, improve our policy package, support quality growth, and also ensure fiscal sustainability and that local government debt risks are under control. To be stronger, it means we need to appropriately expand our fiscal policies. There are 3 aspects.
The first is boosting fiscal spending. The national general public budget expenditure last year was 26.06 trillion yuan. This year, fiscal revenue, fiscal deficits, and interest subsidies will be used to expand fiscal spending as appropriate. The second is boosting the role of special purpose bonds in driving investment. A proper amount of special purpose bonds will be issued by local governments, invested in more areas and used more widely as capital funds, providing sustained driving force for investment. The third is boosting the delivery of funds to local governments. Transfer payments from the central government to local governments will be increased, with priority given to regions in difficulty and underdeveloped regions, so as to secure spending for people's basic needs, wage payments, and functioning of local governments. As for making the fiscal policy more effective, on the one hand, preferential tax and fee policies will be made more targeted to help companies in difficulty. On the other hand, the structure of fiscal spending will be improved to leverage the catalytic role of fiscal funds in spurring total investment and promoting consumption. Meanwhile, coordination with monetary, industrial, technological, and social policies will be boosted to form synergy for the overall improvement of economic performance. The proactive fiscal policy entails a great deal, and here I want to stress 5 priorities. First, improving tax and fee support policies to ease the difficulty of enterprises, taking into account both the needs of companies and fiscal capacity. Tax and fee cut measures will be further improved, with an emphasis on supporting micro, small, and medium enterprises, or MSMEs, self-employed households, and industries in serious difficulties, to reduce the burden of enterprises and give a boost to their development. Second, strengthening the coordination of fiscal resources and maintain the necessary intensity of spending. Funds will be concentrated on major tasks, and the mix of policy tools will be improved. More will be invested in laying the foundation, producing long-term benefits, shoring up weak links, and making structural adjustments, and fiscal capacity ensured for major national strategic tasks. Third, improving the structure and boosting the efficiency of spending. Party and government bodies will keep their belts tightened and spending low to benefit the people. Active support will be provided to scientific and technological research, rural revitalization, education, and green development. The special transfer payment mechanism will be improved to promote the standardized and efficient use of fiscal funds. Fourth, balancing the fiscal capacity among different regions and promoting equitable access to basic public services. Transfer payments from the central government to local governments will be boosted to enhance fiscal support for localities. Reform in fiscal systems below the provincial level will be advanced, and the mechanism of long-term fiscal guarantee at the county level will be improved. A system of standards for basic public service guarantee will be advanced. Fifth, strictly enforcing fiscal discipline and preventing risks. Fiscal revenue and spending will be strictly regulated and the monitoring system improved. Illegal borrowing will be curbed. The growth of hidden debts will be checked and existing debt properly dealt with. Efforts will be made to ensure no systemic risks arise. Thank you.
Question from Reuters. Due to the decrease in land transfer revenue, the guarantee of anti-epidemic expenditure and infrastructure expenditure, and the pressure of debt concentration and maturity, some local governments are facing a tight fiscal balance. How does the Ministry of Finance view this situation?
请翻译一下。
您好，我是路透社的记者。由于土地出让收入减少，保证抗疫支出和基建支出。叠加债务集中到期压力，一些地方政府面临财政紧平衡状况。请问财政部如何看待这种情况？ This question in fact includes a number of smaller questions. Thank you. Let me first share with you the information about our budgetary revenue and expenditure last year. In 2022, the general budgetary revenue of local governments was 10.88 trillion yuan, up by 5.9% after VAT rebate, and general expenditure was 22.5 trillion yuan, up by 6.4%. So local governments generally maintained smooth fiscal operations. As we continue to optimize our pandemic control policies and the package for stabilizing the economy and the follow-up measures continue to be released, the Chinese economy will continue its rebound, and local government will see better fiscal conditions. I believe that in your question there are 3 smaller questions to be addressed. The first is about the sales of state-owned land use rights. This is regulated as China's government-managed funds. It is a main source of the government managed funds budget, part of it is used as a general budget, accounting for about 15% of the government managed funds at local levels. There was a decline to some extent last year, but its impact on the budget expenditure was under control. We are still waiting for the final accounts to have the concrete figures, but if we put the decline roughly at 2 trillion yuan, we'll see that its impact on the budget of local governments was about 300 billion yuan. We must be also reminded that this is an indicator of gross income, because with the declining of the sales, the cost expenditure of demolition will also be going down. Because you see, there is an interplay between revenue and expenditure, so its actual impact on the expenditure is not that significant. On the maturity of debts, last year, China's statutory debt ratio was about 50%. When you look at the situation in other economies, this is quite a low level, which gives us the capacity to manage the risks. The problem is that the debts are not evenly distributed. In some areas, local governments face greater risks and pressure in meeting their principal and interest obligations. We are urging the relevant local authorities to fulfill their leading responsibilities, resolve the risks, and hold firm the bottom line of avoiding systemic risks. We are confident that we can do that. On the balance of local government fiscal book, between 2020 and 2022, the budgetary revenue increased by 2.5% annually on average. Last year, it dropped by 2.1%. So there was a tight balance, like you said. This drop of 2.1% is a few percentage points lower than the 10-year average. But the fiscal capacity of local governments is not the same thing as their budgetary revenue. 40% of their fiscal capacity comes from the direct transfer payments from the central government. In the past 3 years, this has been increasing by 9.3% each year on average. And I also cited the figure for the 5-year average in the past 5 years. So you can see that we are increasing the transfer payments from the central government. This 9.3% is 6.8 percentage points higher than the general public budget revenue of local governments. So it can make up for the insufficient revenue at their local level. In terms of budget execution, we can see that local government's expenditure increased by 3.4% on average in the past 3 years. So indeed, there is a tight balance, but it is also growing in quantity, and execution is in good condition. Thank you.
In terms of spurring total investment, fiscal funds can have a catalytic role. Will they see an increase this year, and what areas will they go to? Thank you for your question. Special purpose bonds issued by local governments are an important means to spur effective investment and stabilize the macroeconomy. Since 2018, 14.6 trillion yuan of such bonds have been issued. In 2022, more than 4 trillion yuan of such bonds were issued to support a number of projects. A total of around 30,000 key projects were supported. These projects have contributed to strengthening the foundation, shoring up weak links, improving livelihoods, and boosting investment, providing strong boost and support for economic and social development. This year, the proactive fiscal policy will be stepped up and its effectiveness enhanced. The Central Economic Work Conference has decided to improve the mix of policy tools, which include special purpose bonds, and while supporting high-quality development to ensure fiscal sustainability and that the debt risks of local governments can be manageable. We will earnestly deliver on the decisions of the conference and set a proper scale of the bonds to ensure that the intensity of government investment will be maintained and the bonds can play its catalytic role. The scale of the bonds will be disclosed soon. You also asked about the areas of investment. This year, in addition to the existing 11 areas, we will expand as appropriate the areas of investment and the scope of capital funds. We will continue to strengthen the construction of key projects to generate more physical gains and drivers of investment so as to help bring about high-quality development. More will be arranged in this regard. Thank you.
The ministry released a report on accounting financial supervision. We are seeing that the efforts have been intensified to ensure the red line is not crossed. What does the ministry have in mind to tighten fiscal discipline? Let me give the floor to Vice Minister Zhu. Thank you for your interest in this area of work. The CPC Central Committee and State Council places high importance on this field of work. General Secretary Xi Jinping has given important instructions on several occasions. The ministry has been thoroughly implementing these important instructions, fulfilling its leading responsibility, tightening discipline, and playing an important role in promoting strict governance of the party, regulating the fiscal and financial order, and promoting high-quality development of the economy and society. Recently, the General Office of the CPC and State Council issued opinions on further strengthening fiscal and accounting supervision, setting up the general framework of this field of work. This is very important for carrying out fiscal and accounting supervision and tightening discipline in the new era. The ministry will firmly implement the guiding opinions, discharging our duty, building the system, tighten the discipline, adopt zero tolerance toward all violations to make sure the discipline is executed. We are going to work in 3 priority areas in our special campaign in 2023. First of all, we will ensure that the major decisions of the CPC Central Committee and State Council are put into practice. This will be our primary job. We will resolutely handle all violations that go against the decisions of the central government, the requirements of governance, and affect economic and social development. Second, we will strengthen the discipline we will implement fiscal and taxation policies, enhance frugality in state and party organs, and strengthen local government functioning. These will be our priority areas. And third, we will crack down on all violations in fiscal and accounting activities. We will be thorough in our efforts, plug holes, use rigorous punishments to clean up the conduct, to strengthen our supervision of accounting information and intermediaries, and tackle financial fraud. Like you mentioned, the fiscal system has punished over 170 accounting firms last year. This is more than the combination of the past 3 years. This year, we are going to intensify our efforts. The ministry will conduct reviews of 35 accounting firms and 10 asset evaluation agencies, and the fiscal departments in various localities will also have extensive reviews to uncover issues and resolutely handle these issues. They will also expose the problems and typical cases to make sure that the discipline is honored and executed. Thank you. Thank you. I'm with Peng Pai. About tax and fee cuts,
how will the beneficial policies of tax and fee cuts be carried out this year? I will ask Vice Minister Zhu to take this question. Thank you. In 2022, facing the triple pressures of demand contraction, supply shock, and weakening expectations, the CPC Central Committee, with Comrade Xi Jinping at its core, with the big picture in mind, made the sound decision to improve macro regulation and resolutely implemented a mix of tax and fee support policies which strengthened market entities and promoted economic recovery. Looking over the past year, the policies have the following 3 features. First, they come in great intensity. New tax and fee cuts and deferrals last year exceeded 4.2 trillion yuan, among which about 2.46 trillion yuan was value-added tax or VAT refunds, more than 3.8 times that of the amount in 2021. This is the greatest intensity seen in recent years. Second, the policies were front-loaded. The scope of large-scale VAT refunds was expanded, and most of them were delivered in the first half of the year. Refund of existing VAT credits was completed in the second quarter, which is ahead of schedule. So the policies were introduced swiftly, and they delivered results early on. Third, there is much more synergy and coordination among policies. A package of policies such as exemption of VAT for small-scale taxpayers, phased deferral of social insurance premium payments, and reduction of some passenger vehicle purchase tax were introduced to ease the difficulty of the recipients. The tax and fee cuts directly addressed the difficulties of market entities and brought much-needed relief to them. The outcome is quite significant. Last year, for the 100,000 key tax source enterprises across China, the tax burden per 100 yuan of revenue dropped 2.7%. And as the minister just mentioned, China's tax-to-GDP ratio last year dropped to 13.8%. That's excluding the large-scale VAT rebates. Then the tax burden would be about 15%. So the companies had more cash flow, enhanced development vitality, and greater resilience against risks and challenges. This year, we will continue to leverage the role of tax and fee policies to support the enterprises and to maintain stable economic performance. We will, taking into account fiscal capacity and the needs of the enterprises, decide on the policies and make sure that they are thoroughly implemented. First, we will implement well the existing policies. We will continue to implement the tax and fee reduction policies that have been clearly defined and take concrete steps to reduce the tax and fees that should be reduced. Meanwhile, we will resolutely crack down on tax evasion and tax fraud and curb arbitrary fees. Second, we will work to improve the preferential policies. Current measures, such as tax and fee cuts and tax refunds and deferrals, will be continued or improved as necessary to deliver more benefits to market entities. Third, we will make the policies more targeted, highlighting support for MSMEs, self-employed households, and industries in serious difficulties to boost their momentum and vitality.
第二排这个问题。
谢谢。我是日本共同社的质量提问。从宏观经济的观点来说
，From a macroeconomic policy, it is important to expand domestic demand, domestic consumption. What policies will be particularly important in this area? And the purchase subsidy for new energy vehicles has been suspended. What other fiscal policies will be introduced to encourage domestic consumption? Let me give the floor to Vice Minister Xu. This is indeed a very important question because consumption is a critical engine driving growth. It is also the final end of production. The report to the 20th CPC National Congress has made it clear that it's important to strengthen the foundational role of consumption in growth. The central government also made it clear that we need to prioritize the expansion and the restoration of consumption. In the past few years, final consumption has contributed to over 60% of economic growth in China. But due to the impact of COVID, consumption has been growing at a slower pace. This is also one of the important reasons for a slower overall growth of the Chinese economy. To promote economic rebound and sustained and healthy development, we still need to leverage the role of consumption and make it a key driving force of the economy as it was in the past few years. To encourage consumption and release the potential for consumption, we need to tackle the lack of confidence, conditions, and desire in consumption. The fiscal system will fully implement the strategy for expanding domestic demand in order to leverage the foundational role of consumption and improve our policies. We will work in the three areas to release the potential of consumption and to promote an early rebound and upgrade of consumption. First of all, we will increase household incomes through various channels so that the general public have the means for consumption. We will try every way possible to expand employment so as to create more labor income. We will strengthen support for Social Security and step up transfer payment to increase the capacity of middle and lower income groups for consumption. We will improve our preferential tax and fee policies to encourage more society-wide consumption. Second, we will support the supply of competitive goods so that the people have options in consumption. We will exercise a proactive fiscal policy, promote supply-side structural reform, enhance better quality supply in order to unlock the potential. We will encourage local governments with the means to subsidize smart and green home appliances. And for the new energy vehicles bought in 2023, we will continue to exempt the vehicle purchase tax. We are going to lower import tariffs for some quality consumer goods and work faster to build a housing supply system in which there are multiple suppliers, multiple channels of supply, and both rental and for sale units are on offer. We will support people's need for housing and improved housing. Third, we will strengthen the channels for marketing and logistics to make it more convenient for consumption. We will improve the business and commercial environment at the township level to encourage greater and better consumption in these areas. We will support the development of the supply chain system of agricultural produce to expand the market for the products, and will also support the construction of a number of national cargo hubs to reduce the cost and enhance the efficiency of logistics. Thank you. Yes, there is great interest in the general revenue and expenditure this year. Can you share with us more information, and how will the ministry ensure livelihood expenditure? Yes, I see there's a lot of interest on this question. This year, looking at the revenue and expenditure, we can see that there is a upward momentum. In terms of more revenue, we are now seeing economic rebound, which will help us bring in more revenue. And there is also the low base effect from extensive VAT refund last year. So due to these two factors, fiscal revenue have a good foundation for restorative growth. But we are also aware that the foundation for economic recovery is not yet firmly established, and the fiscal revenue still faces uncertainties. So this is on the revenue side. It is going to increase, but perhaps not by a very large margin. Our tax burden is not very high compared with the worldwide level, about 15%, as was said earlier. In terms of expenditure, we are going to see increased spending in science and technology, rural revitalization, environmental protection, in old age care, education, and medical and health care, and also in coordinating the regional development and the smooth functioning at the township level. We are also going to maintain the necessary intensity in transfer payment. So in 2023, we still face challenges in fiscal revenue and expenditure, but we will not compromise our spending on people's livelihood. Instead, we are going to try our best to increase our spending on livelihood, to promote the people's interests, and to deliver tangible results so that they have a stronger sense of fulfillment, more happiness, and a stronger sense of security. First of all, we are going to continue to implement the employment-first strategy to make good use of the central government fiscal subsidy for employment to help ease enterprise burden, stabilize job opportunities. We will support the employment of the youth, especially college graduates, and help the key population groups such as migrant workers and ex-service people to start their own business or get employed, and support vocational skills training to ease the structural problems in employment. Second, we will ensure education as a priority. In the past 5 years, we have invested 21 trillion yuan in education, and we are going to continue to strengthen these institutions for education input. For many years, we have maintained over 4% of our GDP in our education input. And tax as a share of GDP has been declining in the past years. Tax is the main source of revenue, while it is falling as a share, and at the same time we are maintaining input in education. So that means in the past few years, education input as a share of our expenditure has been increasing. We're going to help prop up the weak links in education, ensure the supply of inclusive preschool education resources, and improve the conditions of ordinary senior high schools. Third, we're going to help to enhance medical and healthcare service provision. This include better pandemic control, better institutions for fundraising for basic medical insurance, reform of public hospitals, and provincial level unified management of basic medical insurance. Fourth, we will increase social security. We will carry out nationwide unified management of basic old age insurance of retirees, promote the retire pension for individuals, support policy support for childbirths, and in response to population aging, and support people's need for housing and improved housing. On the basic old age pension of retirees, I was asked this question previously here. I said that no matter in which part of the country and from which company you retire, your basic old age pension will be insured. In the last 2 years, we have kept our promise. And basic old age pension was supported. Fifth, we will continue to improve the environment to protect and restore damages to the natural environment, to ensure we have blue skies, clean waters, and pollution-free soil, and promote the green and low-carbon transition of key industries and areas. Thank you.
Xinhua News Agency. Keeping the belt tightened brings both immediate and long-term benefits. How will you continue to implement the requirement for party and government bodies to keep their belts tightened? This is a very good question. In recent years, operating within one's means and economizing where possible have been the guiding principle for finance departments at every level. We have indeed been working to keep our belts tightened. This is realized by increasing the efficiency of funds used. Take the central government as an example. The central government takes the lead in strict expenditure management. General expenditure have been steadily reduced for 4 years straight. In 2022, the central government's spending budget dropped 2.1% and in actual implementation 3.5%. We have actually stepped up support for spending in key areas by concentrating the funds where they are needed the most. General Secretary Xi Jinping pointed out that hard work and frugality have contributed to our past development and growth and will help us break new ground and achieve more successes. This reminds us that keeping our belts tightened is not a short-term measure, but a policy to keep to for the long run. We must continue to keep our belts tightened and free up more funds to help local governments support basic people's needs and market entities. By keeping our belts tightened, we can ensure that the people live a better life. If the government spends more, that means less funds will go to improving people's livelihood. In the past 5 years, transfer payments from the central government to local governments totaled 40.66 trillion yuan. This has ensured a balanced fiscal book over the past 3 years. If you look at the whole country's situation, it has not been affected by the decreasing fiscal revenue in some localities. We will always bear in mind General Secretary Xi Jinping's instructions and continue to keep our belts tightened to ensure that every penny is used where they are needed most. First, we will tighten the budget. Second, we will ensure strict enforcement. Third, we will mobilize unused funds. And fourth, we will conduct regular evaluation. We will strictly formulate budgets, eliminate inefficient and ineffective expenditures, and concentrate funds on the country's major strategic tasks. We will be strict with expenditures, strictly control the additional adjustments to departmental budgets, and ensure that no new spending increase policy will be introduced, apart from special needs such as emergency disaster relief. Expenditures beyond the budget and exceeding budgetary standards will be prohibited. We will recover unused funds in a timely manner to prevent them from sitting idle. Projects with large amounts of carryover funds will see their budgets cut. The central department will be evaluated on a quarterly basis regarding how well they have managed to keep their belts tightened. And local governments will be urged to develop an evaluation system in this regard also to reduce administrative costs. Thank you to our ministers and our friends from the press. We've come to the end of